two commissioners who told us they could not make the meeting. That's John Burns from District 1 and Carrie Ho'opi'i from District 3. And Melissa Cardwell said she might be a little late. I haven't seen her yet. So I think I will go ahead and call roll for those of us who are here, and hopefully Miss Melissa can make it not too long. So again, and this is Georgine Adams, Chair of EMC. District 1, John Burns is out today. District 2, Lise, you could wave.
Robinson.
Thank you, Commissioner Robinson. District 4 is John Olson.
Here.
Thank you. District 5 is Melissa Cardwell, and hopefully she'll be joining us shortly. And Commissioner McIntosh for District 6.
Here.
Dee Fulton, District 7.
Here.
And Rick Gaffney, District 8.
Here.
And I'm Georgine Adams, District 9. So I hereby declare we have quorum and start the meeting at 9:04 a.m. And I want to apologize because my husband and I woke up at 1 o'clock this morning to see the red moon, and oh, it was so cool. But I didn't do well getting back to sleep. So I may sign off my visual while I yawn. So the first order is to have a motion for approval of the minutes from last time.
So moved.
Do I have a
Second. Rick Gaffney.
Any corrections, comments on the minutes? Hearing none, could I have a vote for approval? I'll say aye.
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 Aye. Any nays? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Statement from the chair. Welcome. I want to let people know I heard that there is a bill on the governor's desk to approve the continued use of virtual meetings. So I think until, who knows, we will continue to have these meetings. I know we wanted to from the last meeting we had, and I personally find it very advantageous to avoid the drive, but also to encourage public to participate as well. So I think it's a very nice facility, but I know a couple of you are having some issues, and we'll try to work offline and figure out a way for you to conveniently be able to log on and see and talk with us. It seems like I've been spending a lot of time in Zoom meetings, talking about this, that, and the other around recycling, reuse, life cycle assessment, and never ending. Everybody's excited, wanting things to move along, to do something good for our environment. And I think we'll be continuing to have those opportunities, and I'll try to share when I hear about meetings so they continue. But I think we've got a lot of energy out there wanting to move forward. Some good ideas that got presented in this last session. The council's interested, the state legislature's interested, and we've got a lot of energy on the public interest groups. And I know this committee wants to get things accomplished. So I'm excited. I think we've got great things going on. And to hear some of the interest from our public, we'll take public statements now. Do people want to speak now, or would you rather wait until the agenda item? I think we have Jerome Warren and Sandra Demerol, and possibly Christine Kubat from Recycle Hawaii that had submitted written comments. Christine, did you want to give, or is that you saying?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, great. Yeah, I would be happy to wait when it comes to the subject matter, but I'm amenable to what the commission wants.
Okay, why don't we, you're going to be talking about EPR, right?
Correct.
Okay, let's have you talk after George Tedesco, I think, is going to present on the EPR initiatives, and then you can maybe even respond in your comments.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sandra, are you on?
Yes, Chairman, I am.
And would you like to give your testimony now?
Jerome Warren and I would like to give our testimony now, please.
Okay, great. Sandra, why don't you go ahead first?
Thank you very much. Aloha, Chair Adams and Commissioners. I'm Sandra Demerol in Nalehu, and once again, I'm commenting on the agenda items concerning the Nalehu and Pahala sewer projects. First, though, I imagine I share everyone's disappointment with the lack of information in this month's director's report, so I hope this lack of transparency is just a one-time occurrence. But the really bad news is the County Council wants to give Brown and Caldwell another $31,528,000 again this coming year, which is another $130,000 per home on the Ka'u LCCs. There's 244 homes, 243. There's 99 in Pahala and 144 in Nalehu. So that's 130,000 in just this 1 year alone. However, as Ka'u's EMC Commissioner Lee McIntosh said in his Bill 22 written testimony, the county should just go back to the original septic conversion plan, which actually cost the county taxpayers only $403,000 and which completed the Pahala AOC at the Senior Center on schedule on April 28, 2018, as you can see on that semi-annual report that I attached. So please speak up and ask County Council not to waste this $31,528,000 this year by paying more tax dollars to the same outside contractors to design 2 wastewater plants in Ka'u that are not needed. Mahalo for your attention to my concerns. Thank you.
I'm Jerry Warren in Na'alehu. First, I want to ask, I see Christine Kubat. She is a lobbyist. Is she registered as a lobbyist? So let me get on with my testimony here, the business report. In regard to abandoned vehicles, they are not reported this month. The woman from New Zealand has failed to get control of the situation at 95-1206 Milo Road in Na'alehu. That's the house across the street from the sewer spill. The woman from New Zealand is not alone. The man from Montana who works in traffic services has not gained control of this property. And neither has the mayor's deputy in Hilo or the planning inspector in Kona. All of these county employees and many others have produced no results. Their conversations with me boiled down to 2 words: golly willikers. Now, over to the agenda item 7C, the Na'alehu Sewer. Here's an open letter to all Department of Environmental Management commissioners, past and present. Back in the late 90s, the federal government created a law which prohibits the use of gang cesspools. The branch of the federal government which enforces the ban on gang cesspools is the Environmental Protection Agency. They are slack in their enforcement in regard to Na'alehu. Please consider the County of Hawaii is in violation of a federal law because the county operates a gang cesspool in Na'alehu. The Department of Environmental Management is negligent. The homeowners in Na'alehu who are connected to this illegal structure are forced to pay the county for the county's illegal sewer. The county's Department of Environmental Management is guilty of operating the illegal sewer, and they are guilty of forcing people to pay. They are oppressive. I'll repeat that. They are oppressive. Forcing citizens into complicity with a federal crime, they are oppressive by forcing citizens into complicity. I'll spell complicity. C-O-M-P-L-I-C-I-T-Y. Forcing citizens into complicity with a federal crime. That's what you're doing. The Department of Environmental Management commissioners must understand the laws which they are sworn to uphold. When you ignore these laws, you are creating disrespect for both the EPA, the County of Hawaii, and for the environment itself. You are not doing what you were put into office to do. You commissioners, past and present, are guilty of malfeasance. When your constituents add up all of these factors, they lose faith in government. They lose respect for all laws. Some become anarchists, like the ones next door to me. Others suffer from their anarchy, like me. It is because all of you commissioners have shrugged your duties. What you commissioners will do next is to look around and see who you can blame. Thanks for nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Warren, for your testimony. Is there anyone else who wanted to make public comment? Hearing none, we'll follow up with Christine when we get to the EPR discussion. Now I wanted to just briefly have the commissioners update us on any progress they may have made and plans they have for the priority areas that we had identified for 2021. I'll go first. The thing I've been concentrating on is getting a status report on implementation for the Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan. And you'll see that's about the only thing that was done in the current director's report. And we'll keep tweaking that to try to get a handle on how implementation is going forward. The other activities I've had have been mostly trying to catch up with what other groups are doing from an informational standpoint relative to waste management and life cycle. We go next to John Olson. If you have anything to report.
Well, I mean, the discussion out at this end of the pipe has been, you know, the issues of level of service on the solid waste side. In other words, our population out here is just booming. The transfer stations find themselves to be overwhelmed on a fairly regular basis. And so we've been having a lot of discussion about, you know, how we're going to deal with that, and it always comes back to the issue of money. The discussion that I've been having with the people out here, particularly around Pahoa town, is where is the money going to come from? As things are currently structured, it all comes out of basically the property tax that goes to the County of Hawaii. We have to find another solution to that, because that is 1950 is over and it's not working. We need to have more facilities to handle the solid waste issue. And we've been talking about the possibility of getting the disposal fee at the point of purchase. much as we have done with the cans and bottles. So that seems, while the drop-off stations are inadequate in number for the population, given the large size of our subdivisions out here and the rural nature to begin with. So that's something that I'd like to have more opportunity to discuss with the commissioners. And I don't expect you to immediately agendize that, but I would like to have you think about how we would go about doing that so that we can collect the resources that we need to meet the demand.
Well, John, I think one of the approaches that applies to some waste is the subject of our new business, and that's the extended producer responsibility and how that can contribute funding. So I think we've got some discussion even today about a potential approach for some waste. But I agree with you that is a big issue and one we need to tackle in multiple ways and forms. And maybe you and I can talk offline on how and when we could get that on the agenda specifically for funding for solid waste. Okay? I
would appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to make sure Melissa's still not with us. I don't think so. Lee McIntosh.
Nothing really new to report right now.
Okay. Not a problem. Dee Fulton, have you any updates to give us?
No updates to share. Thank you.
Okay. Rick Gaffney, the man who's always busy doing stuff.
Yeah, too busy, I think. Couple things. One is you'll find in the documents, I asked that to be included in there is the Department of Health document on what you can and can't do with recycled water, which includes all the definitions and all of the things that can be done. And the reason that I wanted that accessible to you is because we need to start thinking about using this stuff. If the Kealakekee wastewater treatment plant is going to complete its R1 process, or if distribution of R2 water becomes possible, then people need to understand what the parameters are with regard to that. So take a look at that, and it's a long document, but it's nicely broken up, and it's easy to go in the table of contents and find areas that you might want some understanding of. So take a look at that. With regard to the things I've been working on, we're a lot closer, I think, to sewering Honokaʻau Harbor. And we have the support of the highest levels in DLNR at this point, and we're actually reaching out to legislators and preparing to also reach out to our senators and Congress people with regard to being sure that the additional money that's necessary to sewer Honokaʻau becomes available from any infrastructure program that should come out of the Congress. An update, I think, from the last time I brought this up is that Representative Nicole Lowen, who is the representative for the district that Honokaʻau is in, managed to get an allocation of funds for sewering Honokaʻau. And so although it's looking like about a $7 million project to sewer the harbor and connect to the wastewater treatment plant, we've got a commitment of $2.5 million from the legislature, which will accommodate planning and so forth. So the other thing I wanted to just remind the other commissioners, and I'm sure you've all seen it and are aware, but there seems to be a constant problem with catch-22. We, we have this opportunity to sewer Honokahow, but at present there's no larger plan to connect to the wastewater treatment plant and to return recycled water back. We were frustrated enough by that and the obvious need to sewer Honokahow that we're prepared to pay for the connection. And there's a developer who also needs to make a connection. So we're thinking about just getting it done because it doesn't appear that it's going to be done unless it's forced. But that's the kind of catch-22 you run into. You're ready to do something important with regard to wastewater, and then there are hiccups that prevent the completion. And also, it's a very easy thing for bureaucrats to say, oh, I'm sorry, but we can't proceed because X, Y, Z. And really those things are created blocks. They're not necessarily true, and they don't represent the reality that we have to do something. And finally, I was involved in an interesting webinar yesterday with regard to water rights in the state of Hawaii. And an interesting part of that discussion was who owns the water once recycled water goes back into the ground and recharges the aquifer. And not so much who owns it, but who's responsible for the condition that water is in. One of the interesting things about using R1, R2, even R3 water to recharge the aquifers in the state is that, as we know, there are a lot of negative things, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, radiological products from imaging and cancer treatment, and other things like brighteners in laundry detergent, sucralose, and other things that pass right through human beings and pass right through wastewater treatment plants. Eventually, those things individually and collectively are a negative to the human population and to everything alive on Earth. So we need to do some long-term thinking about the recycling of wastewater and what that means to the future, particularly because we live on islands. So that's all I got today.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Again, if you have specific proposals to bring to the commission that we can make our recommendations to either council or to DEM, bring them forward. I did have a question. You said we decided we'd pay for the sewer connections. Who's we?
State of Hawaii, Department of Land and Natural Resources, Division of Boating and Ocean Recreation.
I'm not going to write all that down. Peter will get it. He's really good at minutes.
Yeah, we being the state versus the county, because it doesn't appear that the county is going to be prepared to make that connection in the next 3 years. And we're hoping that we can do it sooner than that. Although there's questions about easements and other things that need to be worked out with Department of Hawaiian Homelands and so forth. But the basic decision was the practical thing to do is make the connection immediately. And then in a discussion with Ramsey, it came up that anyone that should connect to the connection that we put in between the harbor and the wastewater treatment plant after the fact would have to pay in part to reimburse the state for having done that. So it's our presumption that we would go ahead and make the connection now rather than waiting for the 3 to 5 years that it takes the county to do it, and then later on get reimbursed for the parts of the connection that other people tap into.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other updates from people? Did I see Melissa's on? There she is.
Yeah, sorry,
Well,
I'm late.
So I'll make you do work right away. Was there any update to your priorities work that you wanted to do?
No, I'm sorry. I had a crazy couple of months and I haven't been able to get to it.
That's all right. That's all right. Don't feel bad. Okay, going on to 5B. I did submit the letter to the council asking for $50,000 to fund the life cycle analysis of our recycle operations, past and potentially future. I also gave oral testimony. Who knows whether anything will happen. There is another final reading of the council budget on June 3rd. I'm not going to be here, so I don't know if there's anything more we need to pass on there. But I think we're supportive of it. It flows with our support of looking at total effects and not just the narrow section that you might be looking at, much like Rick has been talking about. What are the best ways to manage everything we do by looking at total life cycle impacts if we can. So I'll keep you posted if by chance that we're able to fund that work. Any other unfinished business that I forgot about? Okay, moving on to new business. One of the things, as I was telling you, John, that could serve as funding mechanism to help with the management of waste is the concept of extended producer responsibility, or EPR. And I've asked George Hidesco to talk about what the solid waste division recycling program is working on in that area. It is certainly one of the areas to accomplish funding and enhanced management, preferably reuse of the materials that we had in the integrated solid waste management plan. And so thought it would be appropriate at this time to hear what the division is working on and some of the progress they've made on looking at opportunities for EPR. And then after George is done with his presentation, Christine Kubat will have you give your testimony, if that's okay. So George, are you here?
All right, good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully the PowerPoint pops up. If not, I'll have to ask for Peter for some help, but here we go. And I actually don't see it. No, is it?
I have it here.
So Georgine, do you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, I do.
Oh, hey, excellent. You saw, I don't know if you saw, Peter jumped in here to try to help me, but it actually
mere
worked.
Presence makes things work. It's really amazing.
I wish that was the case. First of all, I'd like to thank the commission for the support of the life cycle assessment, writing the letter, and then Georgine going to council and giving oral support. Again, thank you very much for that. And again, we're very hopeful that that's going to happen. So again, thanks a lot. The yeah, the solid waste and recycling industry is relatively new. And there's still a lot of discussion about definitions. You know, what is a product stewardship? How is it different than extended producer responsibility? The words are sort of interchangeable. And so before we jumped into it, this is a slide from the Seattle Public Utilities. And it's an overview of sort of the leaders in the industry and what their, again, brief definition of both those. Again, product stewardship, and they do talk about the producers being responsible in some fashion. And sort of the difference between producer stewardship and EPR is EPR, if there's legislation, it sort of goes into the category of extended producer responsibility if there's some type of legislation. Again, there's still a lot of argument and I wouldn't say argument, discussion in the industry exactly what these terms are. But ultimately, the idea with EPR and product stewardship is to put more responsibility on the cost of managing the products on the producers, especially with EPR, and also the consumer, and get it away from the taxpayer base. And so again, interchangeable, these terms are used. If you are really into it, we could spend hours discussing the two and the difference between them. But with EPR, and you have the legislation, the intent was that the manufacturers would be responsible for the product, and in long term, they then would make the product so it's easier to recycle, easier to take back, be less toxic to the environment. I mean, that's the big goal of EPR, not just to divert it from the landfill, which is critical, but making the product so it's not as deadly, not as harmful to the environment. Last week, and maybe a month ago or so, Paint Care gave a few presentations. And so Paint Care, Heidi from Paint Care in Washington, D.C., committed to giving 3 separate presentations last week. And what I'm going to do is briefly go through the presentation. So this is her presentation. And I know that some of you did participate in this, but again, I'm going to really just highlight this particular presentation. And the reason Heidi gave the presentation is that we are very interested in this program in the state of Hawaii. And obviously it would help the county here. So currently there's 10 states that have a Paint Care program, and we'll get into exactly what that is, plus Washington, D.C. So there's 11 entities out there. The state of Washington just started theirs May 1st. New York is still working on starting it up, but they passed the legislation, so it is going to happen. With Paint Care, there's actually model legislation that is consistent with all of the states. So it has to be a statewide legislation. You can't go county or region, it's statewide. And again, the state of Hawaii would be a good candidate for this. It's a level playing field for all manufacturers. All manufacturers in this legislation have to participate in some fashion. You also need sustainable financing. And again, the financing comes from the users. And the manufacturers actually pays Paint Care to do the program. So the manufacturers are charging slightly higher for their product to make the system work. The county would not have to touch any funding, no funding at all. So that's a very positive for the county. It's a consistency across the state. So what's in Washington would be similar in Hawaii. So it's consistent, so it's an easy program. And with the legislation comes a clause in there for the antitrust protection. So again, all retailers, all manufacturers, they're all being treated fairly the same. Elements of the paint stewardship law. Again, I sort of went through these. What is the, the key of this is, again, everybody's being treated equally. All leftover paint will be able to be taken back to a drop-off site. Retailers, Paint Care uses retailers extensively, but not exclusively. They do have drop-offs. There's our annual report, total volume paint collected, method of disposal, independent financial audit, education and outreach is critical. Now the last bullet in this slide, the state and the county will be made whole financially. So there is state oversight. There is going to be some state enforcement. This program, the consumer will be paying for all of that up front. So there's absolutely no taxpayer dollars in this program once it is implemented. Again, a role of the oversight agency, just real quick. Again, they're going to review the plans, including financial reports, structure, the annual reports, enforcement activities, and then also on their website, the state's website, Paint Care would ask to have their information on the state website. And even in the counties, we would have that information on our websites also. Drop-off locations. Again, retailers are critical to this whole program. They talked about PPG, Ace Hardware, Sherman-Williams. Those are critical, smaller operations than the big box stores, such as Home Depot or Lowe's, but they also participate. And Paint Care believes that the retailers are interested, especially the small ones, because those are sort of the entities that work with the community. So they want to have that personal care of their customers, and they believe the extra traffic that comes in will actually help their businesses. Now, that's not the only mechanism collection. Possibly we would have some additional collections, maybe Habitat for Humanity, those type places would also collect. And even in the rural areas where there might not be these stores, they do also have events. If events are needed in a community, they will do those. If there's large volumes in a home or even in a business, so this is just not for homes, but also businesses, that they would do a milk run to pick up that material if it's necessary. Financially, you have to have a mechanism that is going to be long-term. You have to establish a good program financially. And you can see the structure that is being currently used. Now, with being in the middle Pacific, our fee may be a little bit higher, but these are areas too that have high cost of living. And you see what the prices are. So there's no fee for half pint or smaller, 35 cents if it's larger than half pint, but smaller than a gallon. A gallon to 2 gallons is running less than $1. And then the 5-gallon pills is less than $2. Now they do not handle the large 55-gallon drums. So their maximum ability is to take the 5 gallons. And it's just easier to manage that type of product. They have a lot of experience, over a decade, and almost 98% of the population in these areas is within 15 miles of the drop-off. I talked about if it's not, they would have events to do that. You can see how many sites they were managing at this point. And again, the household hazardous waste and Paint Care events over almost 6,000. So they do use that as a mechanism to collect materials. And then the almost 5,000 large volume pickups that I discussed. Now, this is what they're identifying as challenges for Hawaii. Now, Heidi's mentioned that she's not a logistic expert. She's sort of more of a policy person. But this is initially what they're seeing. And the state processor, is there a processor in the state? We believe, the other counties believe, that we do not have a processor in the state. So the latex paint would most likely have to go out of state. Oil-based paint may be able to be used as like a waste to energy facility in the state. So there's possibility there's something we can do with that. But solvent-based, oil-based makes up a small portion of the total paint that's being used. And you know, there has been a big transition away from solvent-based to water-based, latex-based. So there's going to be more of the water-based paint. Cost of transportation. Again, a little bit of a challenge being in the middle Pacific. So that is it's something they identified. And we do this with our other recyclables. So we know it's doable. It just it is going to cost a little bit to get it done. What's our existing infrastructure? And the retail environment, they're again, being in an area that they haven't worked in before, they're gonna have to learn more about our retail environment before they move forward. And the potential savings to the county, if Paint Care pay for the transportation, process, and paint, how much would the county save? In our particular case, and talking to the other counties, there is a significant amount of savings in our program. We also believe that we're going to be capturing much more of the paint that is currently going into landfill or being disposed of or saved otherwise. So we believe that, again, we're going to be managing it much more. It's going to be a better management program. Again, this is Heidi's presentation. And here's her contact information. She's been willing to talk to any of us, help out. She's devoted, again, a lot of time to just trying to get us educated. And if you want additional information, you know, here's the slide. And, you know, I'm sure that we'll have this in the minutes too for anybody else. So that's the end of the Paint Care. Now, there was suggested readings out there. I don't know if Georgine, if you had any comments about those readings.
Well, what I put in a fairly recent article that I had read about EPR. There are pluses and minuses and different ways to structure these programs. They can just give money to a county or to a municipality to help defray the cost of waste management and rely on whatever pickup disposal facilities, recycling facilities exist in a location, or they can run it a whole kit and caboodle on their own. And that's kind of the Paint Care model, where it's this organization is a nonprofit. It's set up by the manufacturers of paint, and it tries to get voluntary participation from the retail end, and they manage it all. They manage where you can drop, how you pick it up. They'll pay for the transportation and the disposal. So it is really kind of a turnkey operation that would burden our own county operations. It may, however, interfere with some of the good things that are happening. You can take latex paint now to 6, 7, I don't know what it is, reuse centers and transfer stations. You can take it to Habitat for Humanity. So how do we maintain or not those operations? But coming from Minnesota, which had Paint Care, really easy. You're done with your paint. You don't like that paint anymore, or you never want to see it again. You could take the bucket, no matter who made the paint. Even if it wasn't a Sherwin-Williams paint, it was some Hirschfield, somebody else made the paint. You could take any paint back to a single store that's participating in this program. So it's very easy and simple for the consumer. And all the costs are managed by this organization called Paint Care and funded basically by the manufacturers who are upping the price of their paint to cover that cost. So it's sweet in that respect. My concern, if I have one, is I would hate to see us lessen the amount of reuse of paint that we have going on now. Their focus is less on reusing the paint than on safely disposing of the paint. But that, I think, is something we can negotiate. It depends on what kind of legislation you can work up in your state. So I think looking at what are the different ways that we can maximize our nearest and dearest is, and a big part of their education program is only buy as much as you need. Don't buy gallons and gallons when you only need a pint and a half. So some of it is helping with the source reduction. Don't buy more than you need. And here's an easy place for you to take what's left over if you don't have another way to do it. But how we can preserve and enhance reuse possibilities is, I think, got to be an important part of that. I also wanted to comment that a lot of this is trying to keep anybody who's handling the waste from the retail side to be a small quantity. So they have these pickups after the store gets enough cans, then they'll come by and they'll pick it up and deal with it, so that you don't have basically these waste storage facilities being accumulated in the backyard. So it's very good in that respect, which means also that the big boxes don't participate because they get too much stuff and they'd be sucked into a whole new regulatory regime. So their advantages, Paint Care, like I said, is one example that they have worked up a pretty good system, and we just have to see if the costs are, well, they're gonna have to charge twice as much for the paint just to pay for transportation. Okay, that didn't work. But maybe there's some opportunities to do some processing of the paint in the state instead of having to ship it out. So it's an alternative, and I am very happy to see that the Recycle Group is working on it. I think it's an advantage for us. So I'll shut up. Other questions from commissioners?
I do have a question. Mr. Hiduxo, thanks for sharing.
This is Elise Robinson. Say your name.
Yes, Elise Robinson. So. Sorry, this is Elise Robinson, District 2. What is the roadblock to implementing this program? It sounds successful in other states, but what is the roadblock here to getting it off the ground and running?
Right. The main, I wouldn't necessarily call it a roadblock, but the process of educating the community and the policymakers. County council, state legislators, those are the ones that we really need to educate to get this moving. And then, just so you know, Paint Care would actually come in with a lobbyist, hire local lobbyists to work with those entities to educate them. And again, the legislation, they were pretty clear about this. Has to be close to what they have or identical to what they have in the other states. It is a uniform program, so it has to be very similar to what we have in what they have in the other states. So I see that just as a challenge. We have to make sure everybody understands what it is, and they're willing to put the time in to make that happen. And the counties, again, just not our county, but the other county staffs are willing to do that also. But what we like to see in our particular situation, the EMC become educated on this, support this type of program. Then the county councils, all of them in the state, review it, understand it, and support it. And then we pass it on to the state level. So is there a possibility for this actually to be implemented, legislation passed next session, next year, fiscal year 22? I mean, that would be wonderful. In reality, what they've seen in other states that it takes multiple years. It usually doesn't happen in 1 year. But I would say that like the EMC is very aware of this type of program, and I think our legislature, they're also aware of these type of programs. So maybe it could actually happen in 1 year. Now, the other side of it is making sure that the retailers, the business community understands the program, that they're not going to be burdened with the cost of this. But they will be a part of the solution, part of the program, but it is something positive that they'll be seeing their customers more often because they'll be coming in with the leftover paint. So I see those as the steps that we have to take to make this happen.
This is Melissa Cardwell, District 5. I guess I have a similar concern to Georgine, just in that, I mean, I've bought used paint plenty of times, from Habitat for Humanity, and it seems just a little bit wasteful if it's paint that is still usable. It's just that it's extra. It's basically extra paint that someone doesn't need, and so we're sending it. So we're sending it back, probably somewhere on the mainland, I imagine, and then they're just disposing of it. And I don't know. There's something about that just doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah.
And then the question
sorry, I probably wasn't very clear on that. With the water-based paint, they do recycle what is recyclable, but on mainland, they have the freeze thaw thing where frozen paint is no good, or it's dried up too much and they can't use it. So like at some place like Habitat for Humanity, a lot of places that would still be used as a drop-off. That a lot of times they do volunteer as a drop-off. Now they may take off what they believe they could use locally. So they would still capture that material for the local use. Anything that they believe that they couldn't use locally would then go to paint care and end up, again, majority of it does end up getting reused. Now, that is not true with the solvent-based. Solvent-based is not going to be reused as you would imagine being reused. It is going mostly to waste energy. So sorry, I interrupted you, but I just wanted to point that out.
No, that's okay.
That was my mistake, not being clear.
Yeah, no, that clarification is helpful, and that makes sense. That if there's still the possibility to take paint that could be reused, that Habitat for Humanity or a place like that would have that ability to do so. And then, so then a question that pops up into my mind, and I don't know or think that we can answer this necessarily, but I think there's a lot of barges that go back empty, and so I wonder, as far as transporting, if we're going to be transporting paint back to the mainland, if it's possible to take advantage of those empty barges. I don't know, what would all be involved in that, but that's
an excellent point. And maybe the legislator can help us with that in the future. Up to this point, we have not been getting help with the sort of the backhaul of those empty containers, putting something in. So we're not getting any benefit from like the recycling that's going back. But maybe this legislation would be a good time to bring that up, that we would like some help.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Rick Cafferty, District 8. George, are we aware of any of the Hawaii Island delegation to the legislature that may have seen Heidi's presentation and may already be thinking about this?
Yes, there were some, again, the staff of the representatives, there were, I believe, one or two, and Senna's online too. She has actually her hand up. So Georgine, do you mind if we?
No, please, if Senna's got information to add, do.
Hi.
There.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, there were 3 different there was, I'm trying to think, someone from Senator Gabbard's office was there. Someone from Representative Lowen's office. On a local level, someone from Tim Richards, Councilmember Richards. And there's one other that I cannot remember off the top of my head since I sent out very many invitations. So, but yeah, they had expressed interest right away when I sent that. So I was happy to see that.
So Senna, did you have something else to add besides that question?
No, I think that in my conversations with Heidi, that, and it didn't really come across from even the webinar part of it, but an important part of their program is the discussion of education. Like everyone, because George and I have talked about this, you know, the normal sensation when you're buying something is when it's a bigger container and it's a lot cheaper, you buy more. You know, instead of, you know, you bought paint that's 1 quart compared to a gallon and stuff, and you're like, I might as well buy a gallon when you really don't need a gallon. So a component of paint care is about educating people about that, and the reuse component of that. So I just felt more that came through in my conversations with her than in her presentation. So that was it.
Any other questions from the commissioners? I'm not sure at this point if we need a motion per se, but I guess I would certainly ask for support for you to continue the conversation and see whether or not we can come up with an approach that would work specifically for this island, but for this state overall. Parliamentarian Peter, do you think we need a motion for that, or just encouragement that they go ahead and keep checking into this?
Put me on the spot. You asked for unanimous consent, I believe. We have counsel here to tell me if that's wrong.
Sorry, Peter, I couldn't hear you. This is Diana.
I'm just wondering whether or not we need to have a formal motion, or whether it's a consensus of the commission that, yeah, George, keep going, check it out, see what's possible, what's feasible. And then when you get closer to the actual proposed system, then you can run it through us again. Does that seem?
Well, if you want to have a motion, you know, just to show the continued support for it and what this group wants to see happen in your minutes, then I think it would be useful.
Could I add
I understand it as chair, I'm not the one to make motions. So would someone care to make a motion to show?
I have a quick, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I just have a quick comment. I'm wondering, so, you know, we can make a motion that we're in support of this, but George had mentioned that one of the, you know, when Elise asked the question of what are the roadblocks to this happening, George had mentioned, you know, that the county council would need to kind of have an understanding of this program. So what I'm wondering is this the kind of thing where would we want to write a letter? I seem to be all about letter writing these days, but is that something that would be helpful, George, do you think, you know, for us to have a letter and write a letter to county council, or do you think that that's not necessary?
I would think it would be excellent if you were to take that extra step. I mean, that would be very helpful to have that on the record.
Okay, so so then I guess as far as a motion goes, perhaps we could have a motion to write a letter to county council in support of this program.
And I guess I would want to put a little bit of flexibility in there. We need to see it, how it would flesh out and apply on this island, whether there are enormous barriers that are going to triple the cost of paint and forget it. So I'm not sure what, I have absolutely no problem whatsoever with continuing to explore what kind of paint care program we could establish on the island. So I
Okay.
guess you'd need to revise your motion, or I should have shut up and let somebody second it. But
Sandra has her hand up, so it sounds like she wants to say something maybe.
Yeah, I don't know if this is appropriate time because George's presentation wasn't done. And George, maybe you want to just carry over and talk about the statewide, obviously it's a state legislation and just the support across that we built with the other counties. So you want to talk about that, George?
Yeah, Georgine, I could continue on with the rest
go
of the
ahead, go ahead.
items.
Sorry. We'll come back to the motion with Melissa.
Okay. So currently, I believe that you cannot see my screen, correct?
No, we can't see it, George.
I don't see it.
Okay.
I think you have to do that screen sharing again. Yeah, now we can see it.
Okay, that's good. Let's see if I can see it. No, here we go. All right. So the next thing, as I understand, which was asked of us, was to just give a brief overview of the EPR programs that we have here. Again, I'm going to use EPR, but producer responsibility. So these are the ones, High Five, advanced disposal fee, deals with glass. Again, those are the two that I'm going to give a little bit more detail in, but also e-waste. Manufacturers are responsible for taking back computers, electronics. The one dilemma with this, which is a challenge, is the manufacturers are doing a great job, as I understand it, in the city and county of Honolulu, where they're taking more of the material, but they're getting basically all their pounds that they need from that county, and then we're left behind with minimum funding. As an example, we were expecting to get over $250,000 to help our program, but because of COVID, it was cut back to $99,950, and then this coming fiscal year, it's being cut again down to $95,000. So then we're having to manage the program with the limited funds that we have, compared to, I guess, the way the structure of legislation is, where Oahu is getting much more help. Tires is another one, and now this one puts a lot of burden on the distributor and retailers, where if someone buys a new tire, it is required that the retailer charge for the recycling of a tire. It doesn't matter if the customer leaves behind the tire or not.
Yeah, we can't see your full screen. We just see a little slice.
Oh, is that what you see?
Yeah, it's just a share and comments, and that there's nothing there.
Okay, well, send us here to help.
Can you see it now?
There you go.
Is it on now?
Yeah. Thanks,
no, thank you very much. I'm glad that that I was able to come in and rescue me. All right, so tires, getting back to tires. Tires is, again, the retailer has a lot to do with this, and that they charge for recycling a tire for every tire that's purchased. And the intent here is that if a customer is already getting paid for the tire, they are not going to be taking it away back with them back home and stockpiling it or illegally dumping it. Lead acid batteries, that seems to be working really well, but I'm always surprised during our household hazardous waste collection events how many lead acid batteries are get in. So the automobile batteries, I'm always surprised, a pallet or two of those during our events, even though the customer is being charged money for those batteries. And then motor oil, so there is legislation out there that oil coming in, certain size oil, I'm not sure if it's measured by 55 gallons, but there is a fee on those to support oil recycling programs. And the county used to get some money from the state for those programs. Currently, though, we get zero. We don't get anything. And we have been discussing that we should be getting some funds that help support us from the state, but we have not been successful. So the two programs I mentioned that I just go over more detail in is the High Five. So when you go and buy a container that's eligible for the High Five program, you are paying the 5 cents, which you can get back if you take it to a redemption center, but you're also paying an additional penny for the administration, for the state part of the program, and then also for the recyclers. So the recyclers are being subsidized for providing a redemption center. The ADF glass, so if you buy anything that is in glass outside, so not including the High Five program, so it could be nail polish, it could be any type of container, there's actually a fee on that to help support our program. There was legislation this year to increase that fee to help support our program, and there is a need to increase that. As an example, the money that we get from the state is paying for less than half of our program cost for recycling that material. So at our transfer stations, we have the roll-offs for container glass. And to do that program, we're getting much less than what's necessary from the state to support that program. And unfortunately, if we can't find funds for next fiscal year, starting July 1st, we're going to have to start cutting back on providing that service to our citizens. So you'll see a cutback at our transfer stations, where some of the transfer stations that have glass collection will no longer have glass collection because of our funding situation. So that's sort of a heads up. Now with the EPR, we meet monthly with our counterparts in the other counties. And one of the high priorities is, how do we manage a lot of our products? And what we've done is come up with a list of our high priorities. So, first, what we want to do is improve and update our existing programs, like the advanced disposal fee for the glass. Again, what we'd like to do is to see that increase. So that's one example. And that fee's been the same for 27 years. And, costs just don't stay the same over those years. But the following is sort of a list of what we identified as high priorities, which the other counties are also willing to work with us on, and all of us working together to come up with EPR programs for. And that's white goods and appliances. These are difficult to manage, very costly to manage, and some of them contain Freon, some do not. But we would like to see all white goods be managed under EPR program. We're getting more and more calls about PVs and PV batteries, what to do with them. And this is going to be a much bigger problem in the future. They only have a certain life expectancy, and we're going to see more of these. So what are we going to do with those? So we'd like to see some type of program. Electric vehicle batteries. Again, there's more and more vehicles out there that are not hybrids, but electric vehicles, and also hybrid batteries too, that we like to see under the EPR program. Mattresses, carpets, batteries, again, all batteries, these are household batteries, especially the lithium batteries. There should be more of a support from manufacturers. Lighting, so that's your compact fluorescents, and other types, sharps, so your needles, and other pharmaceuticals. Now, just to identify some other ones, but again, the ones I just mentioned are the high priorities. These are lower on the list, but still a concern of ours that we're trying to work together on to solve the problem with. Again, getting the burden off of the taxpayers. So that's the summary of what we've been working on with the other counties with the EPR, and getting to the letter that was mentioned to support the EPR, maybe it is just something to support the department to move forward and the council to look into future. But there are, cost is, we need to consider the cost. What is the cost going to be? And before we actually jump into pushing this too far, we should have an idea of what that's going to be. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, George. That was helpful. This is Melissa again. I think it's helpful to see that this is already happening, right? It's already happening on the island with all these different things. And it looks like the cost, isn't super high, at least when it comes to glass and whatnot. And I guess the question is how, because there's nothing like this when it comes to paint in Hawaii, who would be the person to talk to find out what the potential cost would be? Because Heidi, you said she's more of a policy kind of a person. She wouldn't necessarily know that.
Yeah, but they would be the ones that we would go to start working on that. So when they start, getting serious about this and hire, someone to work with us, they would be looking at all of these questions that need to be answered, and provide those answers to the community and to our legislature.
Okay.
George, can you take off your screen share?
Yeah, I'd like to. Oh, there it is. There it is.
I mean, it seems to me, this is Melissa again, it seems to me based on, all of these examples that you just gave, that it's very likely that the cost of paint really wouldn't rise that much. Like you said, there were examples of, 35 cents for a gallon and $2 for 5 gallons. And maybe it would be slightly higher than that in Hawaii because of the cost of transportation. Although if we were able to work something out with the empty barges, then maybe the cost would be about the same. So $2 extra for a 5-gallon bucket, I mean, that's really nothing. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Rick's got his hand up.
Rick, go ahead.
I just want to consider this from a political perspective. George, thanks for the details. But it appears that currently there is this hui of all of the counties talking to each other. And we've been advised by this program that they have to have legislation at the state level that is similar to other legislation. So the body that's going to make the final decision is the state legislature, not the county council. So I'm not sure that there's value in reaching out to the county council now, other than to just say to them, we would like you to be aware of this program, and we can get this presented to you at a council meeting. But I think what ideally needs to happen is this hui needs to reach out to the there's an association of county councils at the state level, and they then reach out to the legislators. And obviously we had enough interest that Representative Lowen and Senator Gabbard attended these things. So they're the obvious people. They work very well together, very closely. Senator Gabbard introduces it in the legislature, in the Senate, and Rep. Lowen introduces it in the House. They've done this collectively, even in this last session. So that's the way to move this thing forward, is to move it past the council rather than directly into the council, because that's going to take another year. Whereas if the hui and the Association of Councils agrees to move this to the legislative level, then that'll assure that it'll be heard next session.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. The reasoning for moving that way, because then staff would have the authority to take it to the state legislature. So that was our reasoning. And then all of the staff on each county, if they took it to their council, would also have that authority to speak for the county in moving this forward. But having the Association of County Councils, boy, that is excellent. I mean, that's the place that we definitely want to go to and make them aware of it and move forward. But the reasoning was that then staff would have the authority to move forward with it. So that's why we were sort of looking at the county council.
So has there been previous previous outreach to the council on behalf of allowing staff to talk to the legislature? Are you aware of any other legislation that's been introduced at the county level to do that?
Sorry, I'm not aware of it.
Yeah, I wonder, maybe we need some help from a corp counsel or someone, because if that's what we want to ask the county council to do, to basically enable staff to continue this process toward the legislature, then that's what our letter to the council needs to ask.
Diana, you following this? Is this something you have an opinion on?
Sorry, I was called away to a phone call, and I just caught the end of what Rick is saying. That, and if I understood this, it's to enable the staff to go to the legislature. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's essentially what George is saying is that the staff needs to be enabled to be communicating, I think, with other members of the HUI, but beyond that, the Association of County Councils and legislators directly, because the other way to do this is that we request that the council create a resolution that asks the Hawaii Island delegation to the legislature to carry this for us.
Okay. So when you say the staff, you're referring to DEM staff?
And I don't have a problem with either one. I just don't want us to just reach out to the county council on a casual basis and not give them the direction that we ultimately want them to take.
Right. Well, so you're talking about DEM staff having?
Yes.
Yeah, well, then it would seem that might be something that the director would discuss with the mayor first. And then go from there, because that step.
This is Senna. We actually did that.
Okay.
We sent a memo to the mayor's office and got his approval to explore this, that I can email to you.
Okay, I mean, then have you given any feedback about where you want to go next, or that's just something you're still looking at?
What do you mean?
Well,
are you talking to me or general back everyone again?
Sorry?
Was that directed at me or back to the EMC?
I guess that if you, did the mayor want you to pursue this further with the council, or where was it to go next? I'm just trying to follow.
We asked for permission to reach out to the county council and legislatures for the PowerPoint presentation. So we took the lead on that statewide, and we wanted approval from the mayor to do that. We didn't want to take that action without the mayor giving us the approval to reach out to all the legislatures on this particular item for the presentations.
Okay. So, I mean, then it seems like the next step may be a reso. If there's direction, you know, if you've decided on the direction you want to go.
Well, it sounds like we're kind of circling around figuring out what it is that the EMC should propose to whomever. Maybe we should take this offline and come up with a proposal on what kind of letter we could send. So we clarify just who we're asking what of.
Mm-hmm.
Hello?
Who's that?
Hello?
Who's this saying hello?
Oh, John.
Oh,
I lost you for a while. I was trying to comment earlier, but it wasn't going through.
okay. Comment away, John. John Olson.
Okay, well, just on the current topic, you've moved on from the other one. Yeah, we all serve at the behest of the mayor. I mean, he makes the appointments and the council confirms. So just as a matter of process, it does go through the mayor's office and back down to the council. Are you still there?
I'm still here. Like I said, I'm still trying to understand what process we're doing. Are we writing a letter to the mayor now? Are we writing a letter to council? Are we just telling EM, keep going, yay, you're finally doing something? I mean, just whether or not.
Yeah, we're making a request to the mayor's office. Tell him that we would like to, you know, move forward on this, and that we would like to have the council's concurrence on it.
Chair, this is Peter.
Yes, Peter.
Hi, the motion was not seconded, so you might want to restate and then have a second and go forward from there.
Lee's got his hand up. I think maybe instead of putting our hands up, we should just talk.
I'm sorry. And Dee had her hand up and then she took it down. So I'm not sure if she still wants to comment.
Anyways, this is Commissioner McIntosh. It sounds more like that the staff are they're working on this issue. Maybe they should identify what they want to do next, or they would like us to help them do next, and then come back to us at the next meeting, because we're kind of just spinning our wheels and I don't think anyone really knows how to move forward just yet.
That's kind of where I'm at. Dee, did you have a comment? Dee Fulton?
No, simply that, yeah, about the procedural morass that this thing is, as far as our role in relation to the state taking action. And certainly we can independently speak to our council people and support the paint recycle project. And I think maybe look further into what we can do as a body. I do support the idea of a letter, but I do also recognize the need to do some preliminary research so we can identify some obstacles and do some of the work for the county before we pass it off. That was my comment.
I do have one.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, I do have one question. What is the volume we're talking about? How many gallons of paint are we talking about having to shuffle back?
This is Senna. Or unless George, you want to take this? Go ahead.
Oh, Senna, if you have a number, that would be great.
No, go ahead. This has all just happened like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, no,
right.
we have not received any data from the manufacturers of what the volume we're looking at. You know, we can generate numbers from our household hazardous waste, but that's going to be a small fraction of what's out there. So I would say currently we do not have that number, and that's something that, again, Paint Care would be looking into, what kind of volumes we're looking at when we develop the fee structures. We have to know what volume. And they get that data directly from the manufacturer. So they will know how much is being sold in this county.
In the county or in the state?
That's a good question. Yeah, you probably, yeah, you corrected me, because they are going to consider this the state as a whole, but I'm hoping that they're going to be able to break that out by county also, because they're going to have to develop how many drop-offs we have here.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, given our relatively low population, I would be surprised if that number were, I mean, you know, having been involved in the construction industry here for a very long time, I would be surprised if that number was all that high. I mean, when you're speaking with the contractors, the building contractors, they do tend to share resources. So before they would send you anything back, they would make a few calls to see if anybody else out there would have a use for it. So what we're talking about now is over the counter as opposed to commercial.
This is Georgine again. I'm kind of with the comment that Dee made. We might be a little premature here, and I really need to move the meeting along. So can we do a little bit more homework with the recycle group on just what it is would be the best approach? I think what you're hearing from everybody is, yeah, it sounds kind of cool. We ought to look into it and see if we can make it happen. And then get a firmer proposal on, okay, what do you want us to generate that would help move the process forward? Is that okay with you, Melissa, since you'd started with a motion?
Yeah, no, that sounds great to me.
Okay, so I'll take it on myself. I'll talk to George and Senna and try to come up, and maybe with corporate counsel, come up with what kind of approach next we should take. And like they said, this is a fairly new adventure that they just found out about the opportunity. So let's let this coalesce a little bit better before we take action.
All right, thank you.
That's okay with everybody?
Sounds good.
Silence is okay. All right, Christine Kubat, put you off too long now. If you're still awake, can you give us your testimony?
Yes, here I am. Okay. So we did submit testimony, and I can stand on that. There's information there. Just as a follow-up to the conversation that was just happening though quickly, the county council is the policy-making body of the county, and they've already set policies in favor of zero waste that would support everything that you're talking about. So there's really no need to go to them. But I do think there could be a potential ethics violation in asking them to support a particular nonprofit. It's not clear whether or not they would be a vendor. For instance, you wouldn't go to the county council and ask them to support Hope Services over Going Home Hawaii or some other vendor like that, or nonprofit that's working with the county. The reason why it would be important to have the county involved is because if this is state legislation, then in the different committees, when there's testimony, all the state legislators will be looking to the counties to testify, because the counties are the one that actually handle the waste. The state doesn't handle the waste, the counties do that. So that's why it would be important. Okay, just to kind of add that to the discussion. So I think the main point to make in all of this is that there's a clear difference between these different models for extended producer responsibility and product stewardship. And it all has to do with who's going to take physical control of the materials. That's really the crux of the difference. And this right here is a perfect example talking about the paint. There are people, vendors, entrepreneurs on this island who are already interested in collecting paint. I spoke with one of them the other day. He actually had been working in the past with Habitat for Humanity. So this excess paint in our community is potential, it's a resource. specifically for waste to wealth programs, like involving the underemployed, people coming out of the prisons, people coming off the streets. So we want to be very careful before we just jump in and make any kind of arrangements with these large scale operations or companies or businesses. And so I really commend Chair Georgine for raising those issues. And it's something that we do have to think about, because this excess paint, extra paint, is a potential resource for our community. Then when it comes to extended producer responsibility and these different models, I don't know if any of you actually read the legislation that was introduced this last session, but the bill that was introduced by Rep. Lowen, it was nearly 80 pages long. I read it, I read every single word of it, and it was very complex. The testimony from Department of Health was that in the first year, it would cost $750,000 to implement, regulate. It's a very costly endeavor. So it's important for us to look at models that are going to work for us. And the direction we're going now, Recycle Hawaii, and what we're advocating for is something much simpler. It's sort of like what's happening with the e-waste program, where you have these manufacturers put money into a kitty, but then that's about it. When we look at what happened with the e-waste program, it's the perfect example of why you can't entirely trust, and I don't use that word like in the worst possible way, but you know, there's different priorities, the manufacturers to handle it. They submit a plan, they put money into the fund, and then they run the program the way they want. So when you talk to people who are on the front lines of waste to wealth initiatives, who are helping the underemployed, they're very concerned about this kind of model, because it puts the producers in a position to just round up all these resources and then ship them off to like a incinerator or, you know, kind of whatever, and put everybody in a position where we're just going to keep consuming more and more and more and more, which is what we're absolutely trying not to do. So what we're recommending for Recycle Hawaii is an approach where we target the top manufacturers, producers of fast-moving consumer goods. There's a rather short list that we could work with. There's all kinds of methods for determining how much packaging waste they generate. This big discussion between extended producer responsibility and product stewardship has quite a bit to do with packaging. And so we don't need to target every last producer in the state. If you look at the bill that Rep. Lowen introduced, she was targeting anyone who was doing $1 million or more worth of business in the state. That would be like Big Island Candies. That would be like everybody. The flood of testimony against it that came out was just like overwhelming. So if we target the top producers and we take that first step and have them put money into a fund, and then that fund, we get to decide between the state solid waste management folks and the different counties on how that's going to get used. This is the approach that we're recommending. And then in addition to that, there's something called the Global Commitment for a New Plastics Economy. I've been preaching about this, trying to get everybody to look at their materials. It's a collaboration between the United Nations Environmental Program and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And you'll find, like, out of the top 20 producers of fast-moving consumer goods, 16 of them are already signatories to this global commitment. So the global commitment is something, they're focused on plastic, but plastic is really the crux of the problem. And when we learn how to do with that, everything else is going to, how to deal with that, everything else will sort itself out. A lot of other things will sort itself out. Anyway, so by getting these, focusing on these fast moving consumer good producers who are already part of this process, I think we can move a lot towards the goals of extended producer responsibility, because in that commitment, you see that they're already also focused on those goals. Redesigning packaging, eliminating excess plastic use, keeping all plastic in the economy instead of out in the environment. So it's a voluntary program and we can support that. And then just quickly to end, I'll say that we have talked to Councilwoman Rebecca Villegas, and she is going to be organizing the next state convention of the Hawaii counties that Commissioner Gaffney talked about that's going to be happening on our island in November. And we're already working with her to get a presentation from the United Nations Environmental Program and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation to tell the counties about this program. If the state were to become a signatory to this program, then a lot of the things that we're trying to accomplish with extended producer responsibility legislation could just happen voluntarily by these big corporations. The reason we need the big corporations is we need new infrastructure. They're the ones that have the money and the wherewithal to create that infrastructure.
Thank you, Christine, and would recommend people to go to her written testimony where you can see some links to background information. But again, in terms of just timing, even though I didn't write a report, we do want to hear from Ramsey. And so if I can, I'd like to move to item 7. So again, thank you, Christine, for your comments. So for the director's report, we did get a 2-pager.
Aloha, everybody. How are you?
If you could give us highlights, appreciate it.
I just want to thank everybody for their involvement. Christine, a great presentation. The star of your presentation was the grandson behind you. So definitely, we have a lot of challenges. As you guys know, I don't know if you know, but I want you guys to put the word out. And as far as engineering, we have vacancies for our wastewater. We are very short in engineering. I have 4 vacancies, which 3 I lost. So definitely out of the 5 engineers for the whole department, I only got 1 engineer. So please put the word out. If you know a wastewater engineer, let them apply. The positions have been posted because we are in need for these engineers so we could continue the work on the wastewater issues. Rick Gaffney, thank you so much for your updates. And I really appreciate DLNR taking the steps to move forward into the connections. And definitely we need to work very closely with you. As far as the R1 water, definitely I'll give you guys updates. It's a good update. As I was touring the Waikalua treatment plant, the land, you know, the recycle reduce was always in my head because it's just planted. So I've seen in their facility, there's 5 stainless steel containers that contain sand filter. So I was able to work with them and they're gonna donate that sand filters as a donation to the county so we could dismantle it, reinstall it at our allocated treatment plant so we could start producing filtered effluent that to give us to the R1 level. So, you know, that's great news. We're gonna work on that, try to figure out a way to get that sand filter and put it back to reuse rather than just being sitting there.
Right.
So Rick, that probably could make you happy as far as working on that. So we'll continue working on the details and trying to figure out the contract and the money to be able to dismantle, transport, and install at our facility. And, you know, definitely as far as the concerns about the wastewater and what the wastewater has and doesn't have in it, that's the reason for the pre-treatment program. Hopefully would be coming to you guys also for that program itself for industrial dischargers, commercial dischargers, where everybody, it's a federal law under the SFR 503, the 40, SFR 40, which is Code of Federal Regulation. requires every dischargers to pre-treat wastewater prior to disposal of their waste into public or municipality system. So with that, hopefully we should be able to capture most of the pollutants before it makes it into our sewer system. So that also, as we start reducing the R1, R2 water, at least is going to be free of pollutant, because the dischargers need to be able to capture that at the point of service, where they're going to, providing that service. Either it could be a hospital, it could be a restaurant, it could be auto shop. So all that is going to be specified in the program and how to go about pre-treatment prior to disposal. With that, definitely, if you guys have any other questions that you guys want me to answer, I'll be more than happy to entertain any questions.
This is Georgine. I'd like to point out in your legislative update that an upcoming item that Heather Kimball is working on is to mirror a resolution that got passed at the state level, which is the HCR 27 that I sent the right link to. So to look at that, but basically it's the idea that whenever we're sending recyclable waste out to somebody to hopefully recycle it, that they're going to be doing it in an environmentally sound way, according to guidance from the Basel Convention, which is a UN program that the United States naturally is not a signatory of, and hasn't ratified it yet. So there's some logistical issues, but on a voluntary basis, that we try to make sure that when we're sending things to be recycled, that they would be recycled properly and not just dumped in a river someplace or let kids pile through it to deconstruct things. So just check that out. She's working on a draft. And I believe DOH was very supportive of at the state level. I don't know, Ramsey, if you had done anything to the county, or if you'd had a chance to talk to her about her resolution she's working up.
I believe I've seen an email from her was directed to Greg Goodell, and I've seen it. I'll sit down with him. He's off for a couple of days, but yes, I've seen the email from Heather. What she's asking is pretty much this chain of command of the product. So we have to keep kind of track of where the product going to end up being at. So it is kind of, will be a complicated legislative because trying to chase that product, definitely once it leaves the state, then it falls into different states. So it's just that transition if a product leaves. So there's definitely a lot of details and legal maneuvering of that chain of command and chain of control of the product to ensure that it's not being done in a irresponsible manner.
I know my comment back to her about it was that the state DOH now it's a resolution, it's not legislation, but has lead on trying to establish that we have recipients of our recyclables that are going to manage them properly. So I recommended that let DOH at the state level figure out how they're going to organize it and not duplicate work at each county level. So we'll see where that goes. But I do encourage you to look at, for the commissioners to look at that state resolution that got passed. Next on the requested updates was the Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan implementation status. I believe it's on at DOH now, state level, Ramsey?
Yes, I believe so. And remember, this is the state, the solid waste integrated waste management plan. It's like I keep saying it because it's a living document, but it was submitted as part of, our regulatory requirement. We have to submit one every 5 years or so to let the state know where we stand on things. But definitely, as I was listening to George, and thank you, George, for your presentation about pain care. I think it's, staff trying to also take the action items from that integrated waste management plan and trying to start processing the implementation, because definitely there's certain things that we need to start tackling as we move forward just to show the improvement of these goals that we set before us in the plan. So some of them definitely we need to start proceeding forward, and some we need to start rethinking from the bigger picture of the entire operational plan. So that staff are working on. Hopefully we'll get some answer from our solid waste staff sometime soon when we do a presentation to you on the operational options that they'll be entertaining.
Good. And as you can see, as I mentioned in the beginning of the meeting, there is a table now as a standard part of the director's report that we'll keep tweaking as well to show progress that's being made. I was really happy to see that one of our top priorities of renegotiating the landfill contract with Waste Management, you got the money to continue. Yes. Congratulations. So there is progress being made, and that was part as well of looking at the EPR. Thank you for that. Were there any questions from others about that solid waste management plan piece that was in there? Okay, seeing none, move to the next one. Trailers. Ramsey and I participated in a Waimea town hall and in a council meeting. It was a hot topic. Just wanted to know whether you've made progress. Are you still working on it, trying to figure out what do we do with people and all their trailers that they try to hit the transfer stations with, and they can't get in anymore because it's not safe. And if you're just still working on it, just say still working on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's ongoing. And I just want to make it clear, we're not banning trailers. We're just banning trailers from transfer stations, but the trailers can still be utilized to the landfill. I mean, people still can take their trailers to the landfill. So I know I get a lot of comments, you cannot ban trailers. I bought it, I cannot use it. No, we need to tell people, continue telling people, you can still use your trailer, but you have to drive it to a landfill so you could get rid of your green waste or your house waste. But the garbage bags, definitely continue taking them to the transfer station. If you got a bag or two, put them in the back of your trunk. I've been driving around seeing these vehicles now. They have these, hitch they put it in the back of their car, and they, kind of slide two containers, and they drive around with them with the garbage containers in the back of the vehicle, not trucks, which is kind of creative to carry the garbage with. So I might as well just carry the whole container on the back of your car, which is good. But yeah, we are going to continue as part of the operational plan options, strategically trying to figure out, how we're going to continue providing the service. And some of the challenges that we get, and probably you guys also get it, is us closing these transfer stations when somebody calling sick. we need to maneuver around that. We need to find solutions because it's disappointing to the constituents to have their garbage back in the back of the truck and drive there and find out the transfer station is closed because somebody was sick and we can subsidize or augment that service. So we're gonna be working on that, also trying to find ways of how to continue providing the services when someone calls in sick within our department, that solid waste division. I know we need to move around that corona, keep coming, and it keeps surfacing over and over, but we need to figure a way to continue with the service. If we cannot, as you guys know, we cannot hire that security contract because they have to have certain credentials. And yet, even if they have these certain credentials, they cannot do any of the work that the Swiffer does at the transfer station. Literally, they all have to do is just open the gate and close the gate. So we're looking into that. We're looking into finding a better solution that could allow us either private or augmentation of our staff to continue opening the gate and also do the Swiffer job if the Swiffer is calling in sick. So at least that service will continue. So yeah, if you have any other questions.
Any other questions? Transfer station issues?
It isn't a
there's John trying to say.
Yeah, it isn't a question, it's a statement. I mean, being out here in Puna, I mean, we have limited resources as far as the transfer stations in terms of availability and accessibility. So, and we are building out here at a breakneck pace. And it's going to be more than just who opens the gate. It's when you're going to add the additional transfer stations. I mean, we need some kind of again, in the solid waste management plan, they really did not address the population expansion for certainly the Puna district. So, I mean,
yeah. John, that is a good question, and thank you for it. And I think that's part of the, the options I directed staff to look into. If we need to look at the bigger picture. Do we continue building these transfer stations like Starbucks at each corner, or do we just transition to collection? Or do we need to build a landfill on the east side? So all these questions we need to start looking at in detail. And also we need to accommodate for that growth. Do we need to continue trucking east to west for the next 30, 100 years on the roads? And, is it environmentally, reasonable to continue for a lifetime? So all these options, my staff are entertaining now and looking into. But you're right. You hit it right on. We got more people, more need, more waste being generated. But is it feasible to start building once again? I don't want to get into building a transfer station at each corner just to accommodate that service.
Well, I mean, the problem is that it isn't like you have a choice. I mean, it is a responsibility of the county to provide the service.
That's true, but the service comes at a cost. If you guys willing to.
Well, of course it does, and yeah. That's why I've been trying to start this discussion about collecting the disposal fee at the point of purchase, so we get the money out front.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Even if you get the money out front, is it the right way to spend the money by building a transfer station at each corner? I understand it is our responsibility.
Well, I mean,
also,
how how you choose to use it. In other words,
right.
given the mix of the size of the subdivisions that we have here, we have subdivisions with 8,500 square foot lots, and we have subdivisions with anything from 1 through 5 acre lots, and each one is going to have a somewhat different approach. So, I mean, again, the planning process married to this is how we're going to get the money has to move along in step with one another. You can't do one at a time. You don't get to, it's just going to have to be, you're going to have to walk and chew gum at the same time, because we're falling way, way behind.
Right.
And that's not, I'm not making it your fault. You're the new guy on the block. So I'm not blaming you for this. I'm just making a statement. Having worked on the solid waste issue out here in Puna since 1993, I can tell you that we are way, way, way behind on what should have been done. And the county has not stepped up to do it. And it always comes down to the money. And I do agree that simply allowing it to be paid for through property tax is not sustainable.
Yeah, you're right. And that's why we need to continue looking at the option, analyze the option, then start figuring. Once we identify the option, then we determine the cost of that option. And then we determine the actual fee that needs to be implemented to cover for that option. And once the fee is recognized, then you're right. Is it being collected at point of service, or is it being implemented as a fee to each parcel? So, and that's a process. And we need to be able to select the most easiest implementation of the process. That's something that cannot take legislation procedurally, because any time you submit a legislation, probably looking at 2 or 3 years, we have the admin rule in place. So I'm trying to maximize the use of the admin rule to start implementing these fees. Probably that would be the fastest approach. Once we start implementing that the fastest way we can, then you're right. Then we can start telling you and the constituents, this is way past due, and this is the plans that we need to do for either your district or different districts. And we may end up starting doing it with a pilot program,
well, I'm certain that certainly is going to have to happen. Yeah. Yeah, no doubt about that. But
yeah.
I mean, but we do have to come to a conclusion on this and start moving soon.
This is Melissa. I'd like to say, I think the fact of the matter is that, we only have 100 years left in the, the Kona landfill. And that's not very much time at all, coupled with the fact that I know in Puna, as John was saying, I've lived in Lower Puna for 20 years now, and we've seen massive population growth here. And with that population growth, a huge increase in the amount of trash that's on the side of the roads. And just the other day, and also we have tons of illegal dumping down here. There's a lava tube just down the road from me that has, it's got refrigerators in it. It's got lawnmowers. It's got dishwashers and ovens, and all kinds of stuff. And there's tons of that in Lower Puna. And so, this really is an issue. And I guess I wonder, what's going to be the determining factor in deciding how we deal with this, whether it's collection or, building. I don't think personally building another transfer station is really going to help much of anything. I think that we need some kind of collection system, because that will definitely lessen the amount of trash that's on the road. I can't tell you how many times I've seen trash flying out of the back of someone's truck, and just ending up all over the highway. And I think it would take care of, I think it would take care of a lot of problems. And we have, you know, our subdivisions. I know in HPP, for instance, you know, more and more people are moving in there. That would be a perfect place for collection. It's a grid. So I guess, yeah, I guess I just want to kind of, you know, be sort of chime in with John and just say that this is something that, yeah, that we need to kind of move on, and we're running out of time.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would.
mean, you're right.
If I
you
may,
know, that's the reason when I first. Oh, go ahead, John.
There are several plans that the community has worked on over the years that are in a box somewhere in your office. I'm hoping. I mean, yes, starting with the small lot subdivisions, you know, those of 1 acre or less. The problem is you're going to run into there, of course, is that those are all almost totally private roads. So you simultaneously have to address the roads issue, because you've got to be able to get your trucks in and out. And that, in some of the subdivisions, is going to be a challenge, trust me. So this is I mean, as we all know, Puna was designed to fail. And now we're trying to unscramble it as land use management goes. If I can help, I will.
Yeah, maybe we need also to work with the planning department. Even a private road, they're supposed to be designed to meet the municipality roadway, at least minimum of 20 foot wide. But
well,
God
of course,
knows how
again,
your road's been designed.
I mean, you know, this whole thing gets rolling. You know, before the planning department had a planning department. I mean, the subdivisions in Puna were not planned. They were simply implemented. I don't know. Have you read Land and Power in Hawaii?
Not yet.
I know
you and
all
I
you got to
talked
do
about
is, yeah, all you got to do is open the chapter to Puna, and you'll know all there is to know about it. Mr. Dawes did an excellent job of laying it out.
I know there's a lot of challenges, and we have to find a solution. But continue not finding a solution is not a solution.
Well, I mean, one of the Diana, and we're getting rather far afield from our agenda item here, which was trailers.
Yes, that's true. I apologize.
So I think we need to kind of get back on track. Sorry.
No, I agree with you, Diana, that the whole issue of funding and planning, and Ramsey, you made the comment that you've got your guys in solid waste looking at the bigger picture operational options. Do you have a time scale on when you expect to get some proposals?
Actually, I just sent that email to my division chief this morning. So once he gets back, I'll have him start doing timeline, and we'll share him with you.
Okay, great. And maybe we'll be sure to get that on the agenda for next time. Our favorite topic is next, agenda item 7.2C, status on Na'alehu and Pahala gang cesspools. And Lee, jump in if you have some specific questions.
That process continues as we continue working with EPA. Because we, like I said, it could be a litigation issue, so I'm limited to what I could share with you. But I could entertain a question to the best of my ability at this time.
Okay, this is Commissioner McIntosh. I don't know if you can share or not, but I was wondering if converting to the gang cesspools to the septic system, if that is an option the county is considering, and if not, what other options are you considering, since it doesn't sound like you, from previous comments, that you wanted to proceed with the lagoon that's currently in the works?
Well, or I could tell you the cesspool to septic will not be an option that would be entertained by the Department of Health or EPA because it's more of a municipality gang cesspool. It's not individual. So the written admin rule, the written administrative order of consent is for secondary treated sewer. Unfortunately, that train had passed the station a long time ago, back in 2005. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Lost it.
Anything else, Lee?
That was the only question I had at the moment.
D Fulton has comment. Have to unmute. D. Excuse me.
Let me try that again.
Okay, good.
All right. I wanted to be respectful of the and give recognition to the fact that there could be a court case about this, but I wanted to ask Director Mansour to, if possible, to make comment to what Jerry had said earlier about the Brown and Caldwell contract as it relates to that part of the world. Can you say anything to that? Because I am also have a concern about the amount of money being spent on something that may not develop.
I really don't know where Jerry came up with that $31 million. I had no clue that we were going to spend any amount of money to that extent, to that contract. So I cannot answer because I don't know where he came up with the number.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about the gang cesspools?
Well, I guess just as a curiosity, what is the timeline?
Timeline for which item of the project? I mean,
well,
that's the whole idea.
Any forward movement down there?
We are under certain deadline based on the current administrative order of consent. So, and that's the whole idea is, you know, trying the legal aspect of the whole thing is the deadline. So we, you know, deadlines subject to negotiation and subject to discussion. Therefore, I cannot really talk much about it. But definitely, we in the route of doing something. But you know, the details we cannot talk about.
Well, I mean, just as a curiosity, if you can comment on it, I mean, is his expression of the cost anywhere close?
Well, it depends how it's going to end up. It depends how it's going to be ruled. It's, you know, cost, as far as the cost to EPA, it just, they don't look at a cost, they look at implementation of the rule.
Well, I mean, you know, isn't there some place there for cost benefit? I mean, not to be facetious about it, but would we be better off to put them all up at the Hilton? I mean, you know, it's I'm just trying to figure it out is all, you know.
Yeah, believe me, join the crowd, Jay.
Yeah, I know
we all are trying to figure it out, and proper way and to move forward and find a solution. But yes, I mean, we have a administrative order of consent that was issued.
Yeah, I know more about it than I ever intended to. At one point in time, back in 1994 or 5, Puna and Ka'us shared a council person. So I heard an awful lot about what was going on down there at the time. And this goes back that far. So, okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think it's basically, Ramsey's in the old between a rock and a hard place on.
Oh, for sure.
To negotiate any changes in that consent order. He and I threw some blue sky things out as well, just trying to brainstorm where we could go.
Yeah.
Very frustrating. And I guess again, we feel the pain, some of us more than others. And if there's something that the commission can do to help in that way, we would be happy to consider it. But at this time, we cannot be part of the negotiation process.
Right.
So it's being informed of where you are and if you need help to get assistance from the powers that be.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next item is talking about the Hilo wastewater treatment plant. We heard a presentation at I think it was our last meeting from Rick Bennett, and I listened in on a Zoom meeting. I said, I think I've been Zooming too much. My brain is zoomed out. Looking at creative new technology options for dealing with fallen to pieces wastewater treatment plant. And this containerized membrane bioreactor, MBR, concept was described by Rick, and then at another meeting, heard about an organization called Cambrian that basically, instead of paying them to run your wastewater treatment plant, they basically, you buy clean water from them, and they'll pay for the whole schmear of bringing in the containers and cleaning up the water and then giving you the water for, I have no idea what fee. But just to ask the question of, is that one of the set of options that you're considering for the Hilo wastewater treatment plant, if only on a temporary basis, just to buy time so that nobody gets themselves killed at the plant, or we don't wipe out the bay. So just how you're looking at options, how broad they may be.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to shout out to Dr. Bennett. Him and I had a meeting last week, and I do appreciate his time, and every time I get the opportunity to sit down and talk to him. With that said, definitely the Hilo plan, every time we look at a plan, either Hilo or Pahala or other plan, Kalakehi, usually we analyze it from an engineering point of, first, how we're going to meet the regulatory requirement from the permitting aspect of things. We look at the latest technology to process and give us the quality of water. Also, the geographic location and the site specifics. Definitely the east side is not like the west side because we get a lot of rain. So even if we produce R1 water, a type of level and spend the money to produce it, is it going to be used, utilized? All that questions come to play as we analyze any treatment plan during the design process. So our first action is to identify the items and the parts and the components that are failing. We have a consultant on board that staff secured I think about probably a year ago, and they trying in the process of finalizing the assessment. Once we finalize that, we'll sit down and tackle the process of how we're gonna modify it. Is it better to, you know, and it goes down to the funding. Is it better to just, you know, restart again because we don't have a redundant system as we speak, because we cannot take anything out of service. We have to have a facility built nearby, then do the transition at the end. The Cambrian products and other products are good for a small, you know, amount of flow. The Hilo is 2.8 MGD, 2.8 million gallon per day. So that's a high flow. The plant is designed for 5 MGD. And as we implement the new design or the replacement of component, also we need to address the cesspool and future connection, because we cannot just ignore that, because eventually the area, tributary area within the Hilo facility treatment plant does have a lot of majority of these homes are in cesspools. So we need to start, as we even looking at the replacement, we need to also look at the transition from cesspool to actual connection. So all that is being looked at. It's not an easy process, it's a complex process, but yeah, yes, we do entertain any other technology out there, but I guarantee you we're going to challenge that technology and see what they provide and not able to provide. I already have many conversations with Cambrian, you know, because the idea is even our that product is good for the hollow treatment. So I had a few Zoom meetings with them, and we asked some questions. We were supposed to get some answers, and yeah, the process continues.
Good. Any other questions around Hilo wastewater treatment plant?
Yes, Commissioner McIntosh, I guess the only question is, can the plants actually be repaired, or do they have to be torn down and replaced?
Well, I mean, there's some component you definitely need to replace because it's beyond repair. Some other component we may be able to repair. We get into a point though, as you do the repair, you cannot take the current component out of service because you don't have a redundant system. So, you know, we'll keep you posted. It's just a challenge. But yeah, and that's what's being identified is, you know, if we end up replacing in kind, you know, it has to be built next to the old one because we cannot take the existing one out of service. So it has to be newly constructed.
John here. I mean, the practicality of that, given the fact that that plant is within the tsunami inundation zone, I mean, would it not make more sense to find a site on higher ground?
Well, you cannot do it on a higher ground because the way we select waste treatment plant, it has to be at the lowest spot because you want to try to do gravity flow, because otherwise the mechanical cost, if you put it higher ground, is going to outweigh the benefit because it's going to be very costly to mechanically lift sewage to treat it. So the idea is you want the sewer to flow naturally in a gravity manner to the treatment because that's the least expensive. But as you know, the plant is already sited and the plant is already permitted for that location. Even entertaining moving the plant to some other location, it's just just the siding itself and relocating all the infrastructure underground to reroute it, it'll be overtaking and very, very expensive.
This is Commissioner Elise. To maybe piggyback on your question, John, what's the risks or the challenges you see building in the tsunami zone area? What would be the downside?
Well, the downside is that when the next tsunami comes, the sewer plant will be disabled. And so the impacts of the tsunami will stretch far and wide, far beyond just the tsunami itself. So from an emergency response perspective, what's plan B?
Yeah, that's usually the challenge as engineers we get into. Just to let you know, the Sand Island in city and county is an island within an island. That's almost,
yeah, it's been hardened.
But I'm aware. We try to design around it. We're trying to have enough bells and whistles to allow us to continue the operation. But yeah, I mean, things like that, you try to design around it, but try to avoid it. It's hard to.
Being a gearhead, I kind of followed, what happened at Sand Island and how the city and county of Honolulu hardened that facility for a worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the cost, it's a whole different thing when you've got a city of 1 million+ people and and a whole island with less than a quarter of that population.
But the challenge to relocate it, that's the whole idea is we don't have the customer base that could be able to fund the relocation of any facilities because we don't have the people. I wish we had the million. It would be easy to create the customer base and the revenue that could allow us to do what Sand Island is doing. But definitely here, we don't have the customer base. Even trying to, even rebuild another facility within the location, you're looking at $300 million.
Are we sure that that it's in the tsunami zone? Because Steve just posted in the chat that it's actually not in the tsunami zone, the wastewater treatment plant. He put a link in the chat. So perhaps it's not in the tsunami zone. And then then that wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, I think go ahead, John.
Well, I guess I suppose it depends upon how you describe a tsunami zone and what your worst case scenario is.
Mm-hmm.
I know that having socially worked with some people who were in charge of the sewer plant over the years down there, they felt that the designation of the potential tsunami was being significantly underestimated.
Hmm.
And that's true anywhere within the island, John. So the idea is, I don't want to get detail of designing and what have you, because I'm going to be running, I got another cabinet meeting to go to.
Okay, thank you.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other question I could entertain before I bail out in about 10 minutes?
Okay, and maybe it applies to your cabinet meeting. We did send in the letter supporting hiring a consultant to work up what kind of funding mechanisms would be applicable for wastewater treatment management. Has there been any response to that?
I have not heard anything in regard to that matter. But I could, I have a meeting with the mayor tomorrow and I could ask him if he has received the letter and kind of get a feedback and his thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, that was part of the process that we were saying, you know, okay, let's get somebody to lay out all the funding mechanisms that we can for wastewater treatment and get some arms around that, and then where the next steps go. And hopefully that will be successful in coming up with a model on how we can fund this big but small population island, and apply that as well to this solid waste program, and basically approaching things with an enterprise fund logic, looking at where it's reasonable for fees, dealing with the fact that the state steals the money from the counties all the time. How do we maintain a sustainable funding program? And I believe that what I hear is that you are trying to plan the big picture and the options that are necessary to deal with the big picture. And the wall you keep running into is funding. So appreciate your efforts. And again, we're just trying to figure out how can we help support doing it right and making sure that we're looking at the broadest array of options that are possible, and not just going with the old standard solutions that really don't make sense on this island. Right. So any other last minute questions for Ramsey before he runs away?
No, just a thank you for working on it. And yes, it's nowhere near your fault.
Thank you, John, and just keep call me and let's talk more, because I really like to get your institutional background and memories of how things evolved. And I committed to even, because of that Planner 5 position, I added to actually assist the Puna district to lay out, the planning for the solid waste and the wastewater for that district, because I know you guys have a lot of challenges.
Yeah, and it's all in the book if you look at it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We did the planning part.
All right, sounds good to me. Great advice. Thank you so much, John.
You bet.
Thank you, Ramsey. And Ramsey's really open if any other commissioners want to directly contact him and share ideas, and especially if you want to bring back topics that should be discussed by the council. Appreciate it. So aloha, run off to your meeting.
Aloha. Please put the word out for engineers. I got 4 vacancies. Anybody you know, please have them apply, because we do need them. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Next up on the agenda is future agenda items. I think I need to double check my notes, but in terms of action items for today, it's getting some clarification on what is it we want to ask, whether it's the council or some other, the mayor, on moving forward on this Pink Care EPR proposal. And then John, I'm gonna talk with you about how we could maybe set up a discussion on funding for solid waste.
Yeah.
And any other items that I missed, Peter will straighten me out. I have asked for our corporate counsel to make a presentation next time on potential for hearings, to hear if people are getting letters and orders from the director after they've exhausted their avenues for challenging, for example, their water is going to be turned off because they haven't paid their sewer bill. We are, as an environmental management commission, authorized to hold administrative hearings to hear those cases on appeal. So we'll get a run through of just what that means and what our function is in that regard. And again, if there are any other topics that you want to cover at our June meeting, let me know. Any other comments? Okay.
Thank you.
On the announcement side, our next meeting is June 23rd. We'll have another virtual meeting, and information will be sent out to you. I also wanted to let you know that Peter Suris has set up a YouTube channel for recordings of these meetings. It's PS Gov YouTube, and we'll send out the link, and he'll be posting within a week or so after the meeting. I have to say I find them thoroughly embarrassing to watch. To see what I said and didn't say correctly, but okay, they're recorded. Also wanted to let you know, Melissa pointed out there is going to be follow-up on the Sustainability Summit. Melissa, you want to jump in and explain?
Yeah, I wanted to announce that. So yes, there's going to be a Zero Waste Summit on Friday, May 28th, which is this Friday. It happened, I actually went to it last year, it was on Oahu. And so the Zero Waste Hawaii is sponsoring it this year. So it's all online, it's free. It's gonna be on Zoom. I put the link in the chat. And I also put a picture of basically what's happening. It's from 8 o'clock until 3:30, and it's sponsored by Senator Laura Ocasio. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name properly. It's going to feature panel discussions focused on, I'm reading this off of the email, on building efficient reuse systems in Hawaii and creating pathways to community composting. And there's going to be some guest speakers, Lieutenant Governor Josh Green, Representative Nicole Lowen, and a keynote address by Kamana Maikalani Beamer. So I think it's going to be wonderful. If you're free on Friday, I'm planning on registering. And I can also email the link as well, maybe to Peter, and then he can send it to us, or Georgine.
Okay. One of the topics you raised got passed on, I think, as well to the county recycle group, and that is a new round of USDA composting grants. George, I don't know if you want to describe briefly. I understand you guys are moving on that.
Yes, we are. So there's, as Georgine said, there's a USDA grant out there that deals with composting. And there's a lot of different directions we can go in. So we're still in discussion. We're meeting with Sarah Freeman from Research and Development next week to go over more details, to try to develop a plan to capture a grant. Right now, what we're looking at, again, this is all for discussion still, but we're looking at developing a educational program, outreach education for backyard composting, and then try to get the funding for the black composting bins for, again, backyard composting. If we look at the environmental impact of what we do on the island, it is much more effective if people do manage that product on their own property. But we need to make sure people are doing it correctly, so the education, and also give them the tools. So that's where we're leaning right now. But as Georgine knows, there's a lot of different directions we can go in, but that's the one we're looking at right now.
And this is a grant that local governments can get. So Correct. The county is the one to take the lead on that. And I think we certainly, if I could speak for all of you, would support it. Yeah, go get the money and pilot and see what we can get accomplished. Are there any other announcements? Hearing, seeing none. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you very much. I think it was a really informative meeting, and look forward to seeing you next time. And again, always let me know if there are specific topics that you'd like to hear about. Not that they'll give us the answers, Lee, but we can always ask the questions.
Vote to adjourn. You need to take a vote.
Oh yeah, we need a vote. I was having discussion about the adjournment. Okay. At any rate, everyone who wants to adjourn, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Nay. Fine. Enjoy, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.